Okay, so in this episode, we are finally going to tackle the gasket issue for the dehumidifier. So what we experienced last time that we were trying to generate water was we were pressurizing the trailer and there was air coming out of here and then getting sucked back in, but it was already dehumidified air that was getting sucked out and then pulled back in. So we've already done a few things to remedy this. We added 2 vents on the drawbridge. We added a vent in the floor right by the exhaust of the dehumidifier. We also added a roof vent to get all the hot air out. And we installed a max air fan that could be sucking out the air, so it would be depressurizing the inside of the trailer when the dehumidifier is running. But that doesn't mean we still don't want to build a gasket. So I thought about this gasket for a while and what would be the cheapest and easiest and needs to, I don't know, vibrate and with the trailer and the dehumidifier running. So what we're going to try canvas drop cloths, and then we're going to spray it after we cut it out and build the whole pattern with it. We're going to spray it with Flex Seal Clear. We'll see how that works. But basically we're going to be building a trapezoid. So imagine 4 trapezoids that are bolted or sewed together. So that's basically why I've enlisted my wife. So we just need to measure everything. So if you think about this, this will be the dehumidifier right here. And then the air will be going like this instead of coming in from the side and getting sucked back in. So this should block that. And then hopefully with the drop cloths and then spraying this on there, hopefully then it's kind of a little bit more airtight. But hopefully with the vent on the floor, the vent in the roof, the 2 vents in the back right here, and this actively sucking out the air, we should be able to have some better water tests on the upcoming road trip. So now what we need to do is just measure the width and the height of the dehumidifier to get this dimension, and then the width and the height of the opening in the trailer to get that dimension, and then how far away we want the fabric or how far away the dehumidifier currently is from the side of the wall, and then we'll get that dimension, and then everything else will just kind of figure itself out by this dimension, that dimension, and then the length away. The other issue is the dehumidifier is not exactly parallel with the wall, so we're gonna have to leave a little bit inside of there, and then how we're going to attach this to the dehumidifier. We have a couple of ideas. One of them, we could put a ratchet strap around it and clamp it down. The other one is we could put a rope, kind of like a cinch bag. We could cinch it. This part's probably going to be bolted to the wall. So we're just going to have to figure it out as we're going along, but we'll keep you included in everything we figure out. So over here, I've cleared off the rolling shelves. So I'm going to just get these all pulled away, and it's kind of nice that these sort of pull away fairly easily. There we go. So this is going to make this whole process slightly easier to get into the actual compartment down there, because the dehumidifier is way down there. So I figured all of the dimensions would be a little bit easier for measuring from the top, from the sides, from the bottom. Because I have the dehumidifier bolted in, we'll probably have to unbolt one side to get the whole gasket on and then slide the whole thing in. But I'm going to take all this down just so we have the greatest access to everything. All right, so this is the dimensions we're trying to do. The opening from the outside of the trailer, and then the actual diameter of the dehumidifier itself. Just trying to figure out both of those things and then leave enough room to actually bolt the, let's call it the gasket, against the wall. And as you can see, the dehumidifier is at an angle, and it's like, so we might need more room on this side compared to that side. So that should be taken into consideration. Also, like, I personally would love for it to be like super tight, but I don't think it's going to be super tight. But I'm gonna just measure that out and get all those dimensions, and we'll bring you back. All right, so the dimensions I got, of course it's not square, which would have made this like just a tiny bit easier. So the dehumidifier is almost at 14. So I added 1/4 of an inch to that. But you also got to think like you're gonna have to get this thing on there, and you're gonna want to leave yourself a little bit, and then so there's a hinge right here. So I'm measuring from the bottom of that hinge up, and if you look at it right there, so it's about a 1/4 inch shy. So of 16. So I went 14 1/4 by 16. And then this dimension is how much I think it can actually go on to the dehumidifier. So I'm measuring down here, and we got about almost 3.5 inches. So when we cut this out, we're gonna go, you know, it's gonna go like this and then go that way about 3.5 inches. And then this is where we're gonna put the cinch, but more than likely we'll probably double this estimate. So it'll probably go 7 inches in case we want to overlap it and then put like a rope going through, or we want an extra padding right there. So we can always cut this later. So this will probably end up being about 7 inches that it's just going to go straight after this angle. And then I got the opening of the door. So I'm kind of going past this flange because it's got a bolt to the sidewalls here. So I got about 18 inches, but we're probably gonna overshoot this to about 20. And then when you're going this way too, see how I put 20 right there? So we're probably gonna add at least 2 inches to both of this. And then I got a +3 right here. So it's +3 inches because it's obviously closer to this side, and there's a bigger gap right here. So I'm not sure if we're going to just leave a bunch of extra fabric because there's not necessarily a lot of spots to jam it in right here. So if we cut this trapezoid a little bit off and a little bit longer on this side, there, if you can see right here, there's about an extra 3 inches. So that's about where we're at, and it would be kind of like a little tricky. So if you're imagining, there's 4 different fabric pieces that we'll be cutting. There's one for here, one for here, one for here, one for here. So this piece completely being 3 inches longer, and then this piece, this part of it would need to be 3 inches longer, and then this one, this part, you know, right there in this corner would need to be 3 inches longer than this side, and then this one would just be the only normal piece. All of these would be kind of stretched in a way. So that's sort of what we're thinking. Hope that makes sense. But now we're going to get to laying this out on the canvas and then cutting it. Okay, so we're ready to start laying it out. And one way to irritate your wife is to use her scissors for scissors things.
Those are fabric scissors.
Yeah, fabric
That's
scissors.
different than paper scissors.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how well this is going to or not work. Not sure how well this is actually going to sew or anything like that. But it definitely has a good texture to it, so it should hopefully take the Flex Seal pretty well. So I think we're gonna need to lay this out, figure out what the edges look like. So what do you want to do there, expert?
Right.
All right, so we're going to attempt to lay this out. I'm going to use wood clamps and just hold the edges. So probably should figure out where the edges are currently. The other thing when you're pulling out fabric is you're not going to want to pull it super tight because the fabric will stretch a little bit. And if you stretch it, then you're going to have a different dimension once you let it relax. So this just kept falling, and it seemed like it'd be easier if this was being held down. All right, so we have fabric chalk right here, and then we have our dimensions. So I'm not sure that we're gonna do this so that we're maximizing all of the available fabric. Like you would kind of lay out the patterns, and then, you know, if this pattern's going this way, then you'd make that one go that way to make sure that you're utilizing all of the space, which I don't feel like we're going to be doing that because it just feels like we're always in a bit of a time crunch. I think we just start with like the first dimension. So this dimension up here, because this might be where we're going to put the drawstring. And if it's currently, we were talking about 3.5 inches. So imagine doubling that, so then it'd be 7 inches. So then imagine being able to fold that in half, and then you could put the drawstring and then sew it again. That might look nice, but we can always cut that fabric off later. So I'm going to take square, and we are going to just measure down 7 inches. 7 inches, 7 inches. All right, so now what we're going to do is, we believe we need about 15.5. So if I start from here, and then, so if you're looking at the top of the, so let me take this right here. So obviously we're dealing with more of a square over there, but this panel compared to this panel, compared to this panel, compared to this panel, they're all going to be slightly different. Over here, it gets a little bit elongated. The panel that's probably going to be the shortest is this panel over here. So you just pick what panel you want to make first, but just keep in mind the dehumidifier and the hole in the opening was taller. So this panel will have to be like taller that way. And then it was more narrow this way. So it would have to be more narrow this way. So each one of these panels, unfortunately, is going to be pretty unique. Probably the only other way to do this would be to then wrap wrap this around the whole dehumidifier, kind of like a burrito, just wrap it around it, and then just mark where you would need to cut, and then do one seam. And I don't know, maybe we should just do it that way. So I don't know if my wife agrees with that, but because this would be nice and more complicated. Let me just dial this back in, 7 inches. I think that there's enough room right here to whatever we're going to flare out. All right, so we will start at about 15.5, and then draw over. I don't know if that fully got that part. Yeah, it did. Okay, so then this part's going to be a little bit tight, but let's try to make sure it's squared up. Okay. All right, so from there, now it's going to be the dimensions, this dimension, however far away we were thinking that it was going to be. All right, so that's it with no bleed. So if this was the top panel, we would still need the amount to go onto the wall, and then we'd still need the amount to bolt to the next piece down. Mm-hmm. So in a theoretical sense, this could be a lot less fabric, because if you look at like how much it actually is. So one of the things that we did, in case you guys missed it or I just did not explain it, was we divided this top part in half so that we knew where the bottom piece was going to go, and then measured against the edge of the dehumidifier to the edge of the wall, edge of the dehumidifier to the edge of the wall. So this would be the top piece. So we would probably write top on this. So this is the top piece. And then this still needs, what would you call it? Not the bleed, but
seam allowance.
The seam allowance. So we would need a seam allowance on both sides to sew this to the side pieces. And then this piece needs probably a giant seam allowance, because this is what's going to be bolted to the wall. So I would say probably something like 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that. But keep in mind, if you just wrap this completely around the dehumidifier, kind of like you're just wrapping up like a hot dog or a burrito or something like that, theoretically this might be a little easier and you might just do it with one seam, but we're going to be a little more complicated.
All right, so you want me to cut?
Cut it.
Theoretically, one down.
All right, so another way to do this so that you're not so confused would be to print out 4 papers, so that you'd say that, okay, here's the dimensions for the top, here's the dimensions for the right side, left side, bottom. So that's theoretically something you can do as well. I don't know that we're going to need quite everything that we just did, but if we just did the top, theoretically the bottom should be pretty close to that, all of those same dimensions, except for the bottom. I don't know how to explain it, because if I hold this up like this, let's say that this is the top of the dehumidifier right here, and then this is the top of the opening. So we were having to measure the distance between there and there. Now, if we took these same dimensions on the bottom of the door and the bottom of the dehumidifier are almost in parallel with each other. Where the top, they were definitely offset, so it was going to be longer. So I think that we'll do the bottom one now. So we'll have the top and we'll have the bottom, and then we'll worry about the sides, because I think this side needs to be even longer, so we'll see. Let's do the same 7 inches. All right, so both of those are 7 inches. Okay. Okay, so now it really helps to just sit here and think about it. All right, so this dimension is for the top and bottom, and then this is for the sides, and then similar with these other dimensions as well. So we will go 15. So if you see what I'm doing, I'm bearing this at the corner, and then I'm pulling up until we meet. So we're trying to do 20 inches. So 20 inches coming up until it intersects. So I think that this is probably going to be as good as it's going to get on that piece. My wife has some tricks that we could do, such as we will maybe pin it together and then we could try it on before we actually sew it. So that could be a good way to do this, because this one right here is going to be a little bit challenging, just because it's in the corner of that where there's like no room. So we'll just see how well that goes. All right, 7 inches, 7 inches. Okay, so we are not doing the top or the bottom anymore. So just in case, I'm going to cross those dimensions out. So front, side, and then back side. So front of the trailer, back of the trailer. So this is going to be fun. All right. So this is where it's got to be a little bit taller. All right, so we're going to go 16 inches. So that would be... Okay, so now we're gonna clean up and then we're gonna show you how we're gonna pin it together just to see if it fits or if we need a little bit more room somewhere. All right, so just have everything relatively where it should have been or where it should be. So this is the top, and then this is the back side, the front side, and then the bottom side. So just take your time and attach one piece at a time. We're gonna start around, so we're gonna leave this piece, this top flap loose. We're gonna leave this back part loose for now, and we're gonna attach everything that's on the inside. So all right, so here's my top. And so the top is probably going to be one of the easier ones to set in there. So just going to have to set in each side and kind of figure out, is that going to be enough? And then here would be the bottom. Here would be the other side as it goes in. And then enough to ramp up and around. So I'm probably going to unbolt the dehumidifier, lift it up, put this in, and then rebolt it back down. It's hard to figure out a lot of this because a lot of this is like very... It's just currently hard to tell whether, is this going to fit? Is it not going to fit? Because we have so much extra to get wrapped around, but kind of looks like it's going to fit. I feel like I don't know enough right now until we actually just kind of sew it together. So I think we should at least sew the tube that goes around this together, and then we'll come back to see if it actually, how it plugs onto that, and then how we could pull it over. I think we'll start there. All right, just trying to find the top again. Wife sewed it all the way from the back to the front. So we're gonna see how well all of that does or does not fit. So it seems like there's definitely a lot of side to side movement. Feels like it's like one step at a time. I don't know. All right, so I finished sewing this and then folded this over multiple times to sew, because I don't know that we're gonna do the drawstring method. I think we might do putting a ratchet strap around it method, because I think it's just gonna be easier. So I also went underneath and unbolted it so that we could lift it up. So it's only unbolted from one side, so that we could just slide this on and double check everything, because this little guy is kind of a pain. And this dehumidifier is no joke. It literally weighs, I think, 100 pounds. All right, so this side right here is literally just gonna bolt up in there. And then from here, that's gonna go up into there, ratchet strap down. And then over here, it's gonna be something like that. So I think we are good-ish to go. So this whole edge right here is gonna be mounted up here under probably a piece of wood, kind of just sandwiching it down, screwing it down. So I'm not too worried about it being frayed off. Plus we're gonna coat it with that Flex Seal, so that part should be fine. So I think we're pretty close to finishing up. All right, we'll see how it adheres. Wow, it's coming off thick. Might have to do a couple of coats. All right, so instead of the drawstring, because I only have kind of thick rope, I feel like we could secure it down a little bit better if we modified a ratchet strap. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut off this end right here, and then we're gonna cut off this end over here, and then just sew the strap on, so then that way it can just loop around itself, and then we can just strap it in. So when you're cutting this, you want to make sure that you burn the ends, so then that way it seals it up and it doesn't want to fray. So because it's plastic and it's thin plastic, it just all kind of melts together. All right, so it's all strapped together. Cut off both ends. So now coming off of this piece, it's just one big strap that is now going to wrap around the whole dehumidifier to hold on the gasket. All right, so I cut these out and then drilled all the holes. So these are going to be the little brackets that are going to go in the tightest spots, right here and right there. So the taller one I'm going to have up here, locking it down. And then the little bit shorter one, I'm gonna have that right here, locking it down. So there's kind of a recess right here. I'm just gonna lock it down, and then this one up in here, and have it something like that, locking it down. So the fabric's actually gonna come, it's gonna be underneath it, and then wrap around and then go back this way. So it's gonna be pretty fiddly, I would say. So this seems to be all cured up-ish, cured up enough. So we're gonna see how it all looks and what it looks like. And all right, so there's our top. So I think what I'm going to do is we're gonna be something like this, I'm guessing, and we're just going to bolt it down and then bend it back over. I'm pretty sure that's what we have in mind currently. So then when it's being held in like this, and then would be bent back over. I think we've made it just a hair big, but hopefully it's okay, and we will just make it work. Just trying to make the whole thing even as I'm pulling it in. All right, I think we're pretty good there. So now time to drive in a screw and see how this goes. All right, so here's how I have it locked in. 3 screws. All right, so now I'm gonna force in this edge, because keep in mind, this is then gonna flip over. So this will be the reveal right here. So as you're looking inside, this is what you'll see. Pretty much nothing. So now to do this part, which should be fun, just like the other part was fun. I think I can slide over. Well, maybe not. I think it's hitting everything. I think as I get more of this locked down, it's gonna get more and more fiddly. I think that'll be the term we'll use, is more and more fiddly. Yeah, there's like no room on this side to adjust anything. Realistically, as long as it stops the air from coming out this way, that's all I care about. Okay, so I think the top and the bottom are pretty dialed in. It is now, all right, I think I got it relatively close enough. Okay, so that piece is on. All right, so I think that those were supposedly the 2 hardest pieces. So we'll have that ratchet strap tying it down. And then up here, we're gonna adhere it to the wall. Okay, so we're gonna adhere it to the wall up here. So we're gonna do that from the inside. I definitely think it's gonna be fun getting a strap around this whole thing. So I think I need to get the strap partially around it and then bolt it down and then secure down the top parts. Because once I secure this down, there's not gonna be any room to really kind of negotiate that strap. And then from there, the strap will just be loose. So it'll be coming in here, kind of going out here. And then I'm gonna secure all of this down and then we'll strap it down. So I'm gonna have to be in and out of the trailer. And then I think I need a screwdriver to kind of push that back and kind of flatten it out a little bit. Towards the rear, can you push up a little bit? Yeah. All right. How does that look? All right, I'm going to try and screw it down and we'll see how well this goes. All right, so the top's in. All right, incoming. I'm on top of the batteries right now, this thing. It's kind of fun. I'm gonna try to do this top one. All right, so I'm gonna try for the middle one now. I don't know that I have remotely enough room. Let's see. Guess now it's time to try to see if we can get that ratchet strap to work. I think we're finished. That was by far the most fiddliest, most tightest quarters to get boards in. Cut myself, got a boo-boo. So she's in there. I think we're blocking at least 99% of the air. There might be slight gaps right here, but what I think we can do is take the same fabric, roll it up and shove it in there. But this is all in an effort to stop the, what we're calling the backwash. Let me show you what I did on the inside. All right, so you can see right here, screwed this in, screwed another board in, and then we have the ratchet strap right here, kind of cinching everything down. So we'll kind of just throw this down here, and then if we need more length or less length or whatever. So that would be the gasket right there. It's being pushed around. Hopefully that stops almost all, if not everything. So everything, including, you know, this, when we did this the other week, everything's getting so tight now because of everything I'm cramming into this trailer. But so stay tuned for, I don't know when the video is going to come out, but it'll be a future video when we're on another road trip in the middle of nowhere, and we're going to see if all of these vents, the max air fan, that gasket, the vents in the bathroom, the vents in the drawbridge door, if all that adds up to more potential of water generation. I have all the numbers from last year, so stay tuned for that. But thanks for watching. We are on to more projects. I think we're putting in a gray water tank into the trailer. We're connecting into the Nature's Head composting toilet. So if you want to see how that's done, that's coming up. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe.